here. Does this sound like you? And what I like you to do here is either do a thumbs up, like use the emotion little icons, or put in the chat, that's me, okay? Are you really passionate about change? Let's see if we've got some thumbs up on that. If we've got some people who are like, yes, I'm passionate. I have a lot of passion. I'm like, oh, there we go. Yes, all of us, we're passionate. Okay. We might also need to acknowledge that some of us are still trying to figure out the language for how to bring people together without creating tension. Does this feel familiar? All right, I see a yes, a couple of some thumbs up on that as well. Yeah, just like, okay, how do we do this? If you are in a community, a system, an organization, you might be noticing two things. You might be noticing people breaking off into silos, okay? And you might be noticing that some people have stopped talking, have kind of given up. There's a silence. Is that at all familiar? All right, yes, 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 there we go. Well, what we want to do today is help you become familiar with a roadmap that we call our Both And Transformation Framework. And today is all about getting grounded in your purpose. We know that it takes these transformation skills to build trust. There's some steps that you can take to get started. I'm really interested in is helping people not burn out. Okay, so throughout all of this and support, if you sign up for coaching with me, if you decide to join our training of facilitators that is coming up soon, it's all designed to help you not burn out. I'm gonna go to the next slide. So just to get a little bit more where we have a sense of who you are here, are you in charge of leading a community or organization or an agency, a group of people? You're trying to do this. Do we have a few people that's like, yep, that's even in my job title, maybe? Okay, yes. So we've got some thumbs up on that. People who are in those positions, trying to figure out how to lead your community, how to help your organization move forward. Are you looking for practical ways to stay inspired and motivated? Yes. And are you noticing a tension in trying to hire and retain really good people, but also recognizing, because this is the thing we're hearing in the literature, right? That you can bring on a diverse group of people, but because of the pandemic, because of expectations, we also need to create a culture that is going to welcome them and help people really belong. So does that feel familiar? Just this tension. All right. Saw a few thumbs up on that. Recognizing that tension, just trying to, yeah, right? So we want to say to you, to start off with, you absolutely deserve to have support for this journey, okay? And a lot of times what we find is that people need a roadmap for how to get there, how to navigate. It's also true that even on that roadmap, you might feel like you started in one place and realizing that there's some things that you need to go back to. So we want to recognize that. We know that it's important to have a place to breathe, right? To feel validated, to just be able to be yourself. And it's one of the things that we've had the privilege of actually helping to create safe environments for people to be brave. You want to be able to see a positive impact. You want to be able to measure things, even though it seems like things are going slow. And there's something about actually talking to someone, talking with people who've been on this road with you that helps with that process. And what we're also finding is that you need a community of like-minded change makers who can share stories and resources and best practices. And that's one of the things that we have seen happen when we bring people together, and we bring them together in a very intentional space. So I've shared 2 tips with you, want to share the third. If any of this is resonating with you right now, you're in the right place, okay? And the third tip is you showing up. Because what's working is making the time to be here, asking the question, actually taking time out of your busy schedule to stop, be here, be present, show up, register, and present. It's also helpful to ask questions, which you will hear us say over and over again, of what's working. The next thing we do is that we want you to hear and understand that we know some of the things that are getting in the way. So this slide in particular is some of what we are hearing right now in the literature, right? That there's this burn and churn that's real, as there was all this initiative after George Floyd's murder to, put some changes in place to really talk about what it means to be anti-racist. What we're hearing, right, is that there's kind of a stall right now. So this can be overwhelming. Let's go to the next slide. And what I see is that many of us, who has time to do all this reading? Okay. And this is just a small snippet. I probably have more of these books. One of these we actually co-wrote, so Facilitating Conversations about Race in the Classroom. It's important to know that despite all of that, and one of my favorite questions to ask and to talk about is that there is hope. And I want to reference this report that came out this year that really helps us understand that, the stats are terrible. Something like 67% of women of color across the globe talk about experiencing racism at work. That if you are dark-skinned, you're experiencing more racism at work. There's just a lot that is very difficult here. But the reason that this gives me hope is that there are 2 really important things that help. One of those is cultivating curiosity, and the other is forming and really being an active ally. So in this report, it gives us some steps forward for how do we transform. And those 2 things are central to the work that we do. So let me just take a moment to share my 4th tip here, as we are trying to actually get a lot in the first 15 minutes or so. I've been talking, and I haven't even really told you too much about who I am. So the first thing I want to say as a tip is to just share a little bit of your story. And so I'm Dr. Deetra Hawkins. I really think of myself more as a facilitator than a trainer. I've been trained in qualitative research because I really love people's stories. And I was introduced to the recovery movement by my 2 mentors, Dr. Larry Davidson and Dr. Arthur Evans. And that work is really about the intersection of mental health, substance use, behavioral health studies, recovery, listening to people's lived experience, understanding that being culturally competent is not always enough, and that we also have to work toward healing racism. And that has been the heart and the core of my work. I am a licensed psychologist, and I've learned over many years that what people really want is to be heard and believed before anything else. They also really don't want you to try to fix them, okay? So you'll hear us in a lot of our work talk about not fixing, because what we need to do first is actually just listen, ask questions, and invite people to share their story. So one is to share your story, as a tip. The other is to invite other people's story in. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I identify as a Black Catholic. I grew up in a community that's called Whitehaven, that a lot of people wanted to change to Blackhaven because white people weren't living there anymore. And because we had forgotten the legacy of Mr. White, who was a Black man who gave us the land to create Whitehaven. I use the pronouns she and her. And I'm here today because I had a lot of different opportunities. I started off kind of as a good problem solver, if I can put it that way. And got to do my dissertation on a program called the Chicago Dinners. Through that, got to participate in what is called dialogue sessions to heal racism. And I have to say, it was the first time that I participated in a workshop that I didn't leave with a headache. Anybody been in a training and you just have a headache, you're just overwhelmed, you're just, you know, it's bringing up so much, it's very emotional, especially when we're talking about racism. And I have participated in trainings trying to talk about racism for many years, had even focused on it, right? And it was that moment of doing what we call a dyad, having a breakout session where I got to share my story for a couple minutes, and then somebody else got to share their story for a couple minutes, and that was it. We weren't trying to fix each other, we just got to hear our stories. So as a tip and as a process going forward, I just want to encourage you to really pay attention to your story and taking time to listen to someone else share their story. The other tip I want to share, because today, a big part of what we are promising to do is to go through our framework. And this is tip number 5, is to bring a team. So team, say hello. We have Elizabeth here. I've got Tony here. We actually have more people who are part of our team, but today this is who we have with us, and they are monitoring chat. They're running the slides. They will maybe even tell a little bit of their story in a little bit if I call on them, even though they get mad at me for doing that. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do now, and this is why you have a team, is that they are going to drop in the chat a form that we're all going to work on filling out together, because I want to make sure that I give you some information about a framework and a roadmap for how to keep moving forward. Okay, so that should have been dropped in the chat. This is going to be the challenge here. Is going to see, can you still see the board here? We're good. All right. So we're going to start off by drawing 3 circles. You've got it kind of already there, but I'm going to draw 3 circles here. All right, we see those 3 circles. Is that big enough? Okay, all right. Now on the outside of the circles is going to be another little, kind of a little crescent that goes around them. And what we're going to talk about in the middle here are 3 P's, okay? 3 P's that we find are most helpful in really getting, moving in the direction of being an appreciative leader, okay? Which is what we're focused here on, is on healing, being an appreciative leader, building up your confidence, helping you not be alone, and most importantly, helping you to fight against burnout, okay? So the 3 P's, 1 is purpose, okay? The other one is going to be your practices. And then we're going to end with possibility. Okay, so normally I like to change the colors up here. We're gonna see if this works for me. I wanna share with you the next 3 questions that correspond with those 3 P's. So with purpose, the main question that we're gonna be driving with is what's working. All right, so in the circle that is where the purpose is, you've got what's working. Our second question, which is where most of us start, most of our questions are at, it's actually where a lot of our attention is in the day-to-day. And we're gonna have that question be, what could be better, okay? And then we're gonna end with my favorite question, which is really a resilience question, but it's in an area that we're gonna be trying to help you think about, which is addressing data and some other things. And we're gonna ask, that question is gonna be, what gives you hope? Okay, so is everybody following along on that? Hopefully you are. What I want to share with you as I draw this framework out is that there's sort of 3 different things in each of these components that we want to be sure that we're addressing. And although I'm going to draw it in a way that might seem like you go from one to the other, I'm really doing this so that you can figure out where you are and what things you might need to go back and, get increase or expand or reestablish. And then what things can help you have momentum so that you can keep going, all right? So if I divide this into 3 here, at the top is really what we often refer to as being an appreciative approach to doing a cultural audit, okay? I'm just gonna say AI, okay? But what that is addressing, actually doing what we would call a cultural audit. The second thing that's important in establishing your purpose, talking about what's working, is actually creating a foundation. And our foundation specifically is around racial healing. So we have 6 modules that have been designed in a very specific way. I'll go into that a little bit deeper in just a moment. And then the thing that we're still looking for the right word to call this, but it's facilitation. And the reason why I want to highlight this is that to facilitate means to make easy. And when we think about this equity work and transformation and all of that, what I want you to know is that there are things that we can do that actually make it easy. That it doesn't have to be about a fight all the time. There are different stages in the process of a movement. And when you create the momentum, then it just sort of flows, but we have to create that momentum. So we're going to facilitate here. Okay. So in our next circle, the area where we're talking about our day-to-day, where we're thinking about what can be better, one of the first things is that we need a team, okay? Because so many of us are doing this by ourselves. So we need a team. Then your team is going to help you with doing visioning. And your team and all of these other pieces that I described before will help you with stakeholder engagement. Sometimes I think a stakeholder engagement is also engagement with your board, with advisory groups, with your community partners, that we really want to be thinking about how are we engaging them in our journey toward equity, toward transformation, toward a culture of inclusion and belonging. And then this last framework for our roadmap, which may seem odd that I'm talking about possibilities, but one of the reasons that I'm doing that is that we tend to think about things in a very binary way, a good, bad, a pro con. And we want to introduce the role of starting off or actually ending with resilience. So in your last sort of process here, we're going to think about policies. We're going to think about resource allocation. And when you come through some of our work, the reason I'm talking about resource allocation is that resources can be money, but resources can also be time, right? Resources can be the way that volunteers are deployed and how we use their gifts in the work that we do. But then the last area, which is where most of us actually start, is data. I love data. The thing about data, and the reason why we want to present this framework, and I would love to see if this is making sense, or you've got questions here, is that when we ask questions in an organization, which I've done with some organizations, and you do an assessment, and let's say that 90% of the people who replied said, hey, everything here is great. But then you dig a little bit deeper into the data and you realize that 90% of the folks who responded were also all part of the dominant culture. So is it really great? These are the questions that we want to be able to mindfully understand, but you might not really understand that if we haven't gotten grounded in our purpose first. So today I want to take more time to really unpack for you, what does it mean to be in your purpose? And I want to start at this phase of our framework, which is in facilitation. When we think about facilitating, one of the things that I want you to know is that you do not have to go get a PhD to be able to do this work. Okay, you do need to become an expert in your own story. The other thing that we know that people struggle with is how to get comfortable with being vulnerable. You know, when people share stories, probably stories they've never shared with anybody else before, and it can be teary. It's you know, often very sad. It's often very emotional. And what we do is that we want to help somebody feel better by saying, oh, it's not that bad. And we end up sometimes nullifying that person's experience. So as a facilitator, we want to help you be able to cultivate that tone, be able to understand where people might be coming from, understand how to actually create the environment for people to be brave. So often it's misunderstood, right? That Dr. King helped us understand riots are often is the language of those who've been unheard. So in our training of facilitators specifically, we help people create safe spaces. We use basic tenets, guidelines, and we actually help unpack what we call dominant culture. All right, so I want to go to the next piece. This is probably the heart of it all, right? This is the heart of doing this work. And when we think about establishing your foundation, I think it's helpful that you get to hear what other people have been through. And just to note this really quickly, a lot of organizations have had a book club. Anybody done a book club? Okay. You know, a lot of organizations have tried to do training on microaggressions. My recommendation is do not start with microaggressions. And they've done some work, but now people are afraid to say the wrong thing. We want to help you help people understand and practice dialogue before you get into like content, just being able to hear somebody's story. And that there are 6 modules, so we'll share with you what those are. I think they're might be in the next slide. This is the order. that we recommend you going into and being able to talk about. So systemic racism, being able to learn how we disrupt discrimination, then getting into the subtle forms of microaggressions, or in another word, which we've been recently introducing, weathering, and then helping people really understand the intersection of racism and poverty so that we can all become better allies. I am going to invite Elizabeth at this point to share a little bit of her story and some experiences that people have shared with us from participating in our foundations course.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Deidre. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I see a lot of familiar faces, which is amazing because we are really building this community of change makers. And to those of you I haven't met, it's great to be here with you this afternoon. I joined, I took the Foundations of Racial Healing course a couple of years ago, and had been on my own personal journey trying to explore my relationship with race and racism. I was reading books, I was attending sessions, I was listening to podcasts, but I had nowhere to go to have conversation about what I was learning, how I was processing the information, and ultimately, hopefully learning and growing from the new information that I was taking in and figuring out, how can I apply that? You know, what is my role? How can I apply that in my work, in my everyday life? So I was nervous to come to the Foundations of Racial Healing course because I thought, oh, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to offend somebody? And what I found was a group of facilitators and a community that welcomed me in. And I felt comfortable exploring my story and sharing my story, and was in community with folks who were also willing to lean in and be brave and share their own stories and experiences. And so the Foundations course helped to give a language, a grounding around concepts, topics, ideas that we all centered around. So it was a mix of content as well as space to process that content and reflect on our own experiences with how we learned the information. And then the facilitation piece, going a step further and doing the training of facilitators workshop, the 4-day workshop, that's when I got to practice what I was learning. And so, you know, I was like, I'm never going to be an expert in this. I will never know as much as Dr. Deidre. I will never have the experience, but I realized that as a facilitator, I am there to hold space, and I am able to create space for people to share their stories and their experiences. And I didn't have to have all the answers. I didn't have to be an expert. I just had to show up authentically as myself and share a little bit of who I was to invite that vulnerability and create the container and the space for other folks to be willing and comfortable to share their own stories. So I initially signed up thinking, I want to do this so I can improve this work in my professional life, which I had a totally different career at the time when I was taking this course and this workshop. But what I ultimately realized and continue to experience is the facilitation training is great because I could implement it professionally, but it has changed the way that I interact with everybody in my life. I am noticing when I'm getting in a debate with my parents and I'm like, whoa, let me try and actually have a dialogue and a conversation. It's changing the way I'm interacting with friends and family and colleagues. And so it has this ripple effect that goes beyond just the professional experience. So for those of you who have not had the opportunity to come through our Foundations course and Training of Facilitators course, I invite you in. It is going to be a great experience. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to be challenged, but it's going to be done in a way where, as Deidre said, you're not going to have a headache. You may need to take a nap afterwards, but it's healing. It's all done with the focus of healing and growth. And if you come through some of the workshops before and you've participated in this work, I would encourage you to come through again. I feel so grateful now that I get to be a facilitator of this work and this content. And every single time I learn something new. So this is, this is not, okay, I go to the gym once, I'm in great shape, I'm buff forever. It is a practice. It is really a lifestyle. So if you have participated, would love to welcome you in again. And for those of you who haven't joined, it'd be great to see you in our upcoming workshops.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And certainly want to encourage people who have been with us before to share and to come back. And also that we have a special. So if you send someone to our training of facilitators, we are going to be offering coaching with me to you and to that person. So for those of you who have joined today, in addition to signing up for the facilitator training, you will also have an opportunity to have additional coaching and support with me. I want to hit on just one other piece before I try to take some questions and make sure that I help unpack a few of these things in terms of this process. And when we think about doing this appreciative cultural audit, so this is essentially beginning with the end in mind, we start off by asking people to answer 3 core questions, right? So what are those questions? What's working here? What could be better? And what is giving you hope? I want you to think about the organizations, the groups that you are with. And we're going to do a little exercise. It's called green light, yellow light, red light. Okay. So before we get to what's resonating, if you have an organization that if you were to ask people what's working here, they would be able to tell you, 3 or 4 things that are making a difference. If you were to say, we're trying to become more equitable and more inclusive, they would be able to give you a story about what inclusion looks like in your organization, in your community. They would also be able to tell you what are some of the things that have gotten in the way. They kind of be able to give you the journey related to that. And they would be able to answer the question, what is giving them hope? That is green, okay? Your yellow, if you have some people who can answer the 3 questions, but what they mostly want to focus in on is the second question, okay? And your organization is red, is when, if you were to ask those 3 questions, you get essentially 2 answers. You either have people only want to talk about what's positive, or they can't answer the questions at all. Okay. So anyone, if you're brave, can you put in the chat, would you say your organization is red, yellow, or green? All right, great. We've got some that are moving in a great direction. Some of us that are yellow, some that are green. Yeah, and just acknowledging that some of us, haven't really been able to have these questions. And the reason I'm raising this specifically is that I know a lot of organizations that ask those 3 questions, but they don't have the dialogue, okay, where they can tell the stories related to the 3 questions. And what I want to help people be able to do as we introduce this framework is help you get grounded in your purpose, right? Help you get grounded in what works, in your why, and not just in your passions. Passions are absolutely important and they're helpful, And we want people to align with that energy, but we also need people to be able to tell stories. And so we have a process of going through each of our different frameworks, that each of the different steps that we just talked through, that will identify, are you red, are you yellow, are you green? And that energy is going to help you be able to figure out what's your next step. So if you're an organization, for example, that might be a bit yellow in the appreciative space, then participating in the facilitator training is going to help you be able to bring the skills and the conversation to help people move into the green. Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time left because we're supposed to do this in an hour. I want to stop now and say, what is resonating? You can put it in chat, you can come off mute, raise your hand. The team will help me know if you are saying anything. What is resonating? Okay.
So I am not the leader of DEI or anything like that, although I did apply at my school and didn't get that, which was fine because the position is more activities based and it's more like, oh, we're doing this, but not really doing much. And so what resonates with me is the need to unpack dominant culture and how to do that in an institution that is very entrenched in its traditions and is quite wealthy.
Yeah.
Excited about that, excited about learning how to do that.
Well, I love that. And that is so, that being able to start where you are is a great place, right? Like that's part of this. And just being with a community of folks so that we can do that unpacking and then figure out, again, going back to the other core parts, what's working in our organization, who are those people who are leaning forward, starting to build your team, all of that is like what we do, but starting off just coming. Let's see, Elizabeth or Tony, who can we call on?
I saw Zane's hand go up and then Georgette's hand pop up.
Okay.
There are advantages to being formally in a diversity, inclusion, equity program and not. And I used to teach people how to be in that program, and now I'm not in it anymore. And I like the advantages of being in a circle where I'm not supposed to be one to talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity, particularly at church, and particularly with homeless vets. I'm so encouraged by this community because the inclusion with homeless vets, that's where I am now. I said green. We're a ragtag group of people who've screwed up so much in life, it's not even silly. And everybody takes accountability for dealing with their PTSD and their traumatic brain injury and fractured relationships. It's an amazing group of guys. These were killing machines who hug each other and say they love each other.
Yeah.
And I get to be part of that. And where we made headway is we didn't used to think about, we called ourselves brothers. We didn't think about women who were veterans. And just in the last 10 months since I've been actively as a mentor and a grants writer, that's the kind of inclusion we really needed. My wife has come alongside of me, and several other wives have come alongside of me, because you could only, the stories, if you saw them on TV, you just change the channel.
Yeah.
There's hope because it's called Operation Barnabas, which is what I think of you, Deidre, Dr. Deidre, as a female Barnabas, because he was the encourager. You're such an encourager. I have no suck up points here. You're such an encourager. You set the mood for us today before we ever got there. You told me what to do with my phone but it's so helpful for me because I'm going to be energized. That's what I said. I'm going to go back to the homeless vets group and share what we've got from here. Those 3 questions, because we are answering those questions, but we're not answering them in like one and done.
Okay.
I'm just really enthused about not being in the program anymore.
I love that. And I can see people first, thank you for your service and continued service. one of the things that's resonating with me in that is that we have to find ways in all different spaces, to show up, ask those questions. They are really powerful. Yeah. Georgette.
Hello, thank you. I just want to say, first of all, this has been amazing. So start with that. And Zane, thank you for your service. I resonated a lot with what Elizabeth said and what Kay said, specifically about unpacking that dominant culture and creating spaces where there are conversations. And what you were saying about like starting with microaggressions, right? Like we say we want to have conversations, but then we put all these landmines down where people have to navigate in order to get to us to have these conversations. But what I'm encouraged about doing is creating spaces where the conversations happen and I don't have to be the one to tell people what they're doing wrong. So I'm encouraged to facilitate conversations and not to be the person dominating and directing the conversation, because all too often as a minority, as a person, I'm a queer woman of color, and I'm always the one in the room going, okay, let me tell you how to fix it. And I don't want to do that anymore because it's exhausting. It's exhausting to be the one who's saying, I'm the victim of the problem, but I now have to fix the problem and tell you how to fix it and then deal with all of your hangups around fixing it. So creating safe spaces where conversations can happen and there aren't landmines and we're able to come to meeting and consensus together rather than being the person to say, this is how we do it, this is how we change it. Because I think that when the conversations happen together and when there's consensus from the people in the room, then there's buy-in. And then you don't have as much of the, if I give you a piece of my pie, then there's no pie for me. If you get pie, then there's no pie for me. Because no, remember, we all contributed to this recipe. We all baked this pie. So there's enough for everybody. And we can see that it's evidenced in the work that we did to get here. So that's my 2 cents. And thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, you touched on all the other pieces that we didn't get to talk about. Okay, so because a big part of what we do and why we start with those 3 questions is that we understand from the foundation that we have more than we need. We're not coming from this deficit framework, and I don't need to fix you because you don't want to be fixed. And then from a behavioral perspective, because I am a psychologist, I'm not with you all the time. So we want people to leave. And if we had time to unpack, when you're red, yellow, or green in the foundations piece, one of the areas that we see when you're green is your organization has all this language, is comfortable with the language, and is actually pushing you to go to the next level. They want to talk about the generational issues. They want to get into the next piece. But we start off with the first 6, and you're green when your whole organization is like, yay, let's do more. Let's keep it going. So thank you, because you just, you laid it out there. That was amazing. That was amazing. And that is exactly what we are all about, is creating that space. Do we have time for one more, Elizabeth, or what should we do? One more? Okay, whose hand is up? What is resonating?
I saw a hand go up and then I saw the hand pop down.
They were like, no, I'm not gonna speak. Kay, you wanna go? Yeah.
It wasn't me, but
Okay.
since the person didn't raise their hand right away, I just wanted to really acknowledge what Georgette said about starting with the microaggressions, because you're automatically getting ready to blow up.
Yes.
And that resonated with me so hard when you said that, Georgette. And so thank you for identifying what that is and why that is not the way to go about it. So thank you for that.
This is also what we do, right? So this right here, this, which is one of the things I said to start off with. Number 1, showing up. one of our top 5, right, is just showing up, being here in this community, and that we we're really building on all of our stories. And we're also being very intentional about the space that we're in and the timing and the process of all of this. So let's make sure you know what you can do and what we're offering here. So Elizabeth, we might want to share the slides again. Again, just love seeing everybody's faces here and having this opportunity. We're all doing such important work, and sometimes it just doesn't feel like we are, doing that important work. But when you come here, when we get to talk together, it really helps with that. So you can take action, and Elizabeth is going to help us get a link so you can register for training facilitators. I'm going to turn it over to you to share these few things.
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Dietra. So I want to share with everybody, we are doing we're doing a special offer, as Dietra mentioned. You all will get, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to share on our website. If you go to our services and you look at the training of facilitators drop down, you can see here we have this special April webinar offer. So for everybody who joined today, and we'll give you a day or two to register before we close out this offer, but if you all register today, even right now, for our foundations course and our 4-day training of facilitators, which is coming up in May and June, we are going to give you all a 30-minute coaching session with Dr. Dietra. So we invite you into the workshops. We will give you a discount code. So the way it's going to work is you'd register using this April webinar offer on our website, and then you will be emailed a discount code that you can then use to go onto our website and book a 30-minute coaching session with Dr. Dietra between now and the beginning of June. So that is our first offer, and we will be sending this information as well in a follow-up email along with the recording of the session so that you all have it. And then Dietra, I don't know if you want to introduce our new cohort, and then I can show where we are inviting folks to sign up for our
I am
waitlist.
so excited. Okay, so I'm so excited. So one of the things that we're getting ready to do, if you are ready for this, we have people who keep saying to us, what's next? We've done training with you. Some of us, some people have done dinners with us. We are going to begin a 90-day cohort. Okay, so just for 3 months, where you will have an opportunity to really dig into and get support on how to lead real change. And I am thinking of real as being restorative, empowering, authentic, and loving. So if you are ready for that, you've done some of the training facilitators, you might want to just jump in to this cohort. This is really going to be around how to be a leader in this equity journey. There will be basically a 1 hour in-person session that we will be hosting right now. We're working on the day. So if you are interested in that, sign up. We will be getting information out to you. We're going to have to limit who we start with. So we're going to have have some things we'll be asking you to do as you get registered. But I'm super excited about this because I've been hearing from people, I'm not, part of an organization, or maybe you are in an organization, but you're not in that role and you're still trying to figure out how to lead change. And so what we find is that people come through our training facilitators and it's great. And then they're like, what's next? And so you need a little bit more time with us. You need to go practice. You need to come back. And so this 90-day cohort is going to give you that opportunity, and it's going to give you access to me so that you can have more of that support over an extended period of time. So Elizabeth will give you access to join in with that. There's so many different things that we can share related to that. Yeah, great very excited, just really excited to be able to support you all in this journey. I think maybe there's just one more slide at the end, or two more things I wanted to hit on before we close this out and take any other questions. So want to just say, you really deserve support. We can do this. Equity really does not have to be hard. Georgette helped make that very clear, right? We create that momentum, we can do this. We'll go to the next one. So I wanted to highlight a couple things. You might be concerned about your leadership buy-in. If you are concerned about leadership buy-in, then the 90-day cohort that we are going to be offering is probably a great place for you to start. If you are concerned about how much time is needed, then I would get the bundle and the coaching call, because we can start right away. And if June is really just not great for you, then what we're going to be doing, we'll have continued opportunities. Get the bundle. You'll get to sign up for coaching with me like next week. And so you can get started, and then we can work on tailoring things to you. But want to take your questions.
Teacher, I saw one question in the chat of naming the 5 tips again.
Okay, so just going back, we're starting off with gratitude. So saying thank you, right? We are gonna take time to breathe. Always important. Gotta breathe, right? That's absolutely critical. We're gonna be really intentional about really telling our stories, right? We're gonna make sure that we are asking and actually listening. And then actually the last thing, which is probably the most important, is you need a team. Don't go alone. So there's that proverb, right? If you want to get there fast, you're going to go alone. But if you want to, sustain, if you want to have, longevity, then you're going to have to bring people with you, which means you'll have to slow down a bit. And that is really what we're all about. One of the biggest lessons to me in recovery is learning how to take that pause. So we like peace. We're gonna have our purpose. We're gonna focus on practices. We're gonna stretch into our possibilities, but we're also gonna practice a pause. And as a facilitator, it's one of those skills that many of us just have to practice more often. That pause. So we can share some of those. We might put a little tip sheet together to send out to those of you who've been with us that just capture those key things. We'll also share all of this information. You'll have the recording. So I want to thank you. Other questions, though? I think we still have like 2 minutes. If there's any other questions or comments, anything. I think Jennifer. See a hand?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry that I don't have my camera on. This is my lunch walk for my mental health. So I've been listening
beautiful.
intently.
Take the walk.
But I just want to say, I think this all sounds really great. And I'm guessing this gets addressed during the facilitation training or the cohort. I was thinking, I've seen kind of company DEI kind of outings before where people felt safe to come say things during the meeting that then kind of put them in a bad situation that afterwards then made them vulnerable. So it can actually cause additional trauma, right? So you're in there to talk about the trauma that's occurred to you, and then you get traumatized by your coworkers about how people treat you after that. Maybe you shared something that you felt safe sharing there, but maybe your organization wasn't quite green yet. So like, how do we have those conversations that protect people?
Yes. I'm so glad you raised that, and I hope we get a chance to talk more about this specifically. But one of the reasons that we design our process within a context, right? So there's there's a need to not just do a one-off is essentially what it is. So if you download our ebook, which I forgot to mention, then one of the things that we talk about is that training is not enough, right? Like it is not enough to just do the foundations course. It's one of the reasons why I will always encourage people to do the facilitator training so that we also understand how we need to work to not just dismantle, but also to heal so that we can have in the very first part from that audit, that cultural audit, the ability to be able to talk about what is true, what is good, and what is possible, okay? And when you have that, then your organization can actually pivot and be responsive to people, create that safety so that we're not having that knee-jerk sort of response when somebody shares something that's really vulnerable. But really great because we need to hold on to those things and we also need to be careful about what we open up and be mindful of that in our work. So thank you for that question. I bet we've got a lot of others you want to just kind of dig into, right? Is that what I'm noticing? This is why we want to do the cohort. This is why this work is so important because we can just go deeper and deeper. And I've really seen people be able to, when you become a facilitator, you're able to take the concepts around creating trust, around what we call the cycle of discrimination. So I could just go into those details, but without the foundation, it's hard to help an organization understand how they've defaulted, right, into that culture of mistrust and the separation and the pointing out the things that are problematic. But you need to have the foundation first, and everybody needs to have that common language so that then we have a way to figure out how to move forward. All right, I know some people have to leave, so we will keep the door open, room open, but as you, if you have other things you want to talk about, we'll hang out as well. But I don't want people to feel like they have to hold on because we are 2 minutes over and we could just keep going. So we'll keep the room open for about 15 minutes, but for those of you who need to keep walking, thank you. We look forward to seeing you at our cohort, the next event, at a training, at a dinner. Can't wait to continue to connect with you. Thank you, everyone.